What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Clint, and this is Late Night Coffee Reactions, where we just scroll through my feed and see what's out there that we can react to from more of a Christian perspective. And right now, I've been seeing this pop up, but this is a Wesley Huff. If you guys know who Wesley Huff is, he's an amazing biblical scholar. He's like a historian who talks about like ancient texts. He's been studying the original like copies of the Bible, way back from thousands of years. But anyway, he's modern day. He blew up big recently. I think last year or so. He made it really big, and he went on a Joe Rogan podcast. And that's what we're going to react to is him on a Joe Rogan podcast. Because Joe Rogan has been surprisingly more interested in Christianity. And he's been leaning in that direction a little bit more, which is a far contrast from where he was like a couple years ago when he's had other Christian celebrities on. And he really went at him hard from certain angles of his beliefs. But right now, this is a part of the pod. It's just a short that they're talking about the resurrection. I think Joe's really intrigued by how they even determine or would even believe that the resurrection could be validated or false or true. So we can jump in here. We're just starting right off on this short. It's called Wesley Huff Gives Historical Take on the Death and Resurrection of Jesus. And this is in historical clips. So let's go ahead and see what they're saying.
Objectively lived. He objectively died. And then individuals close to his inner circle claim that they see him not dead.
Right.
Again.
This is a highly unusual activity.
Highly unusual.
Right. So, but it's hard when you're dealing with illiterate populations, you're dealing with thousands of years of time, you're dealing with an oral tradition, and then you have us sitting here talking about it in 2024, trying to figure it at the end of 2024.
I think that's a really good point that he's really turning up there is that, you have an illiterate population. I never thought of that. And, of course, thousands of years ago. And then we're talking about scriptures that were written. It's kind of weird. I never thought of that perspective of is there majority illiterate? I don't know. I would assume that's what we believe is that everybody was illiterate back then.
I'm trying to figure this out. Literally the end.
Yeah.
The last couple of days. It's very difficult for anybody who thinks of themselves as an intelligent person who's secular to even entertain the possibility that someone died and come back to life.
And I get that. But we've already talked about the fact that we don't think that the only thing that exists is matter and motion. We as in you and I, right? We believe that there's something else going on in this world that's a little bit crazy.
There's something else.
And that to, I think, exclude that, I think excludes something that you're kind of putting blinders on. For. And you do have, you're right in terms of all of these ancient conventions and the ways that things were spread around. But the Gospels are written in the lifetime of the eyewitnesses. And they're written in this period of time where you have groups of individuals who could have fact-checked those things. So
how do you fact-check someone coming back from the dead?
Well, how
many people saw his body, right?
Well, Paul says that 400 people saw him all at once.
400 people saw the crucifixion?
No, saw the resurrected Jesus. Yeah, 1 Corinthians 15, Paul says that Jesus appeared to the disciples, and then he appeared to 400 people all at once. If we read the Gospel of Luke and the Gospel of Luke and Acts, so same author wrote these both documents, he says that Jesus was walking around teaching them for 40 days after he was resurrected from the dead. And so these are written within a time period when you have people who would have seen Jesus' ministry, who were there, say, at something like the feeding of the 5,000, who could have been able to verify or debunk some of these things that are being said. And you go from a bunch of scared guys because Jesus wasn't the only messianic figure who arose and claimed to be the Messiah.
Right.
There were a number of individuals both prior to and after Jesus, but they die and the movement dies with them.
Do you think it's possible that he didn't die? And do you think it's possible that they thought he was dead? Because that does happen. There was actually a case very recently where a guy was about to be harvested for organs. They thought he was dead, and this guy started moving again and came back to life. It's a very, very bizarre case because his family had been told that he was going to be harvested for organs. They were preparing for that.
Yeah.
This guy comes back.
Yeah,
man, Joe's always got the crazy questions. He's always I heard a story about this, and it's just totally the same as like what would have happened in the Bible. Somebody died for 3 days. They were going to harvest him, and all of a sudden he came back. I mean, I'm not saying it's not true and it's not wrong, but you know, he's always got something. But
yeah, I mean, we know a lot about Roman crucifixion, and we know
brutal.
that, and we know that they did their job well.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, if you look at, say, very skeptical biblical scholars, like
that's kind of crazy. When I heard this point, I don't know if he's going to say it right now, but yeah, they said that the Romans, I think there's a movie and a book that came out. It's The Case for Christ. But like during his investigation, he kind of talks about that. If anything, the historical facts of the Romans, they were brutal. And if they killed somebody, they killed somebody.
Like non-believing, atheist, agnostic Christian scholars, they will say if we can know anything about Jesus, like they'll cast it doubt on a lot of the things that we read about in the Gospels in terms of the actual historical Jesus of Nazareth. They'll say one thing we can be sure of is that he died by crucifixion under Pontius Pilate. Because we have not just multiple attested documents that we refer to as the New Testament, but Roman and Greek and Jewish writers refer to that claim afterwards and talk about the fact that you have this guy, and it's mocked within earliest Christianity. So one of our earliest, in fact, not one of, the earliest depiction of Jesus on the cross is called the Alexamenos Graphido. And it's probably from the end of the 1st century. And it's it depicts an individual with their arms raised in an act of worship, worshiping a man with a donkey's head who's being crucified. And right beside it, it says Alexamenos worships his God in Greek.
Whoa.
And it's mocking, right? Because crucifixion was for the lowest of the low. It was for like slaves. In fact, if you were a Roman citizen, you were banned from being crucified.
Who was it that got crucified upside down?
Peter.
What was it? Because like regular crucifixion wasn't good enough for him, or what was it? He didn't deserve it because Christ had gone through it.
Well, so the story is that they say we're going to crucify you, and he says it's like too big of an honor to die like my Lord, and they say, well, we can fix that.
Oh Jesus! Shut your mouth, buddy.
Listen, the Romans were pretty brutal.
Oh yeah.
But this is why we know, like we have. It's interesting. We know a lot about crucifixion, but crucifixion was seen as so disgusting. I believe it was Cicero who said that like the word crucifixion shouldn't even be on a Roman man's lips. I mean, the word excruciating,
right.
X is off of in Latin, and crus, off the cross. So that's where we get that word, is because this was designed to humiliate, and it was designed to be as painful as possible. There's actually really a good article done by JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, which was done by a number of, I think it was in the 70s, or the early 80s. It was done by a group of biblical scholars and then medical professionals. And so they looked at the conventions of what we do know about Roman crucifixion, and then they looked at the descriptions in the gospel to try to figure out, okay, if we could diagnose how Jesus died, how would he have died? And so they basically came up with this idea that he probably asphyxiated to death. You kind of drown in your own blood.
No, I just think it's crazy, like, the fact that, you know, he went over all of these things, that how like lower level it is, just feels like it gives it more validation. And I don't know why it popped into my head, but like imagine today if they still like crucified people or did these kind of barbaric acts of execution. It's like, whoa. I think we would look at things so much differently, like if that still happened. It would almost be like anybody gets executed, right? Think about anybody. Like all of the craziest criminals nowadays, you have to be like the craziest serial killer or something. And like, okay, now we're just citizens walking around. Think about it. When was the last time anybody was like at the level of like being killed? Like they go to jail for life, basically, right? Or they're going to prison for life for doing such and such, which is horrific. And doing, you know, like, that's very, very bad. I never thought about it from that point of view. Like, I just think about it from, like, the Christian perspective of, like, he did it. But think about it from a legal perspective. Like, today, you'd have to be, like, the lowest of the low. Like, I never thought about it from that angle. Something to think about.
Jesus surviving the crucifixion, I think, are narrow to none. And the chance of him appearing 3 days later, completely fine. I mean, if the first thing you do, if you survive a crucifixion and then you go and you find your disciples, the first thing you say is not, you know, peace be with you. It's get me to a hospital, right?
Did they have them back then?
No, not
also, are we entirely certain of their measurement of days?
So this is an interesting question because of the differences between when when the Gospel of John says Jesus died compared to the Synoptics, because John appears to be using the Roman convention of counting time, and the other Gospels, when they describe the timing, appear to be using the Jewish ones. And actually, if you correlate between the two, they match up pretty well. So the thing is, with Jews, any part of a day was considered a day. So 3 days and 3 nights becomes almost an idiom for any part of that day is the day. So if Jesus, and because they count evening to morning is the day, it's very possible that it wasn't like how we would think of 3 24-hour days, especially if he dies on Friday and wakes up on Sunday.
So that would actually make it less time than more time.
Yeah.
So it's not like he had recovery time.
Oh, no, he didn't have recovery
That's
time.
what I'm saying. It's not like it was 3 days, it was actually 3 months.
Oh, no.
Yeah, then 400 people saw him afterwards.
That's the claim that Paul makes.
Paul makes it.
Yeah.
And how many different people have some sort of a recollection or a writing or something that's attributed to them of being witness to his resurrection?
Well, you have Peter, Paul, Jude, James, and Matthew, Mark, and Luke. The thing with Matthew, Mark, and Luke is that Matthew and John are attributed to direct disciples of Jesus. Luke and Mark are not. So they are not eyewitnesses within the Jesus community. In fact, Luke prefaces his gospel by saying that. He's right up front about this. He's like, hey, I'm not an eyewitness. Don't confuse me with an eyewitness. But he actually uses conventional writing. What's the term I'm looking for? He uses writing conventions of the day that would fit within regular biography that was written within the Roman world. So you have a guy named Quintilian who is basically, I mentioned it before, with the he's teaching people how to write, and he says that if you're going to write biography, you need to be interviewing eyewitnesses, and you can't be too far away from the event to be able to write these things. And Quintilian, Lucian, and Josephus, who are all these very prominent ancient biographers and writers of history, have a lot of crossover in the way they describe how you should write history with the words that Luke uses at the beginning of his gospel, where he says, I'm interviewing eyewitnesses and I'm writing up an orderly account. And so he's saying, I'm going to use these methods that are expected as good history of my day. I'm not an eyewitness, so I'm going to try to find the people who are eyewitnesses, and I'm going to try to encapsulate this within a document that communicates what is being written.
So we have an account of the resurrection. Do we have an account of the denial of the resurrection? Is there an historical record of him just dying and this, like a refutal or a rebuttal rather to what they're saying?
No, the only ones from the ancient world that deny his resurrection are groups that come on afterwards that sometimes are described as Gnostics, and they're not necessarily just denying it for the reasons we might think they were. They're denying it because they have incorporated ideas of pagan philosophy where they believe that the spiritual is good and the physical is bad. So if Jesus was crucified, let me back up. If Jesus is God, he cannot have a physical body. So they deny that he actually had physicality to him. This is sometimes called Docetism, because dokein in Greek means to seem. So these groups that we describe as the Docetics, they are denying that Jesus had a physical body. He only seemed to have a physical body. And they wrote documents later on. So the Gospel of Peter, which comes around in 2nd, 3rd, 4th centuries, is being written, and it has Jesus kind of chilling on the cross because he's not really physical, because he's divine, and physical entities don't have physical bodies. So we don't actually get like a concrete denial of his resurrection in that way until you get things like the Gospel of Barnabas in the Middle Ages, which is it's actually the document that Billy brought up to me in the conversation we had, is the evidence that Jesus was never crucified, the Gospel of Barnabas. Well, Gospel of Barnabas is 15th century. It paraphrases Dante's Inferno. It's not an ancient document. So, but in the ancient world, nobody really had that big of a problem with these kind of supernatural claims. The more of the kind of skepticism was why you would worship a crucified individual to begin with.
Wow. So they were less surprised that he was resurrected.
Or that you would worship a crucified like teacher was just seen as silly
because it's so humiliating to be crucified.
Yeah. And that like a god would let himself go through this.
Right.
Like, what are you talking about?
That is so interesting. Wow. Never thought of that. That's pretty interesting. 2 things that I like about this that I'm taking away. And that's all I got for this video. Once again, if you want to go check it out, it's at the JRE Clips. It's Wesley Huff explaining the death and resurrection. Gives historical take on death and resurrection. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to see it, or even watch the whole podcast. It took place like a year ago. But the thing that I like is that he gives some historical details. One, which I never thought of, for why people wouldn't believe back then to now, is that the criminal, like, he was basically like, do you know anybody that went to the gas chamber? Like, family or friend or anything? Like, how brutal that is. Like, I don't know anybody that got that close. I don't know anybody that got that close to getting a life sentence. Like, I might know somebody that got accused of attempted murder or somewhere along those lines that had some type of family or fight or something. But those extreme cases, when somebody's at the level of like murdering multiple people or something, that would get something as, you know, excruciating as crucifixion, where now a parallel that we have in this modern society would be like life in prison or the gas chamber or the electric chair. Like, even think of electric chair. You know anybody that's ever been? All we know is historical people that were like huge mass murderers or something. They got the electric chair. So I just think that, so like, compare that to like, that's what they're thinking of Jesus. So of course, why would you worship somebody that was given the electric chair? I mean, that's just crazy. And yeah, the other historical thing, I totally forgot what he said at the end there, but I'm gonna clip that and maybe I'll think about it. What did he say? But yeah, the other huge thing that sticks out to me is like the other belief that a lot of people don't think, like the Gnostics or even like, I think Jews and Muslims, they all have this like godly spiritual belief that, you know, God would not, you know, hugely God, divine, however they believe him to be, like up in the sky, would never come down to live on earth as a human being. Like, he's far above that. He would never do that. Why would you like take yourself and turn yourself into a maggot, you know, and live down on earth as a maggot? You just never do that. And they look at God as like this huge being up in the sky, and he can't. That's basically what they say when I hear Muslim apologists or Jewish apologists, you know, vying for their faith against Christianity. They say God would never take the form of a human. You know, case closed. The Gnostics pushing for this, you know, in the Greek or the Roman Empire, they you know, the ones that were still witnessing, like he was saying, writing texts, just like God would not take the form of a human, which, you know, I fully don't understand it, and I have no intentions. That's where I think if you're growing in your faith or you're trying to come to faith, or maybe this sparked your interest, I am very humbled by God in the understanding that there's so many things that's beyond our understanding that we can't like understand it. Like, we don't understand how God works. We can understand what he left us to understand, like the Bible and what he wants us to know. But as far as like his divinity, him coming to earth as a human being in the form of Jesus, being 3 in 1, the Holy Spirit, Father, God, and Jesus, you know, all in one. Do we fully need to understand that there's other miraculous things in this world that we kind of don't really need to understand? All we need to do is understand how to love God, have him above all everything else, and love our neighbor like ourselves. I mean, so all of that is, all the law and the prophets is covered under putting God above everything else in your life and treating others the way you'd like to be treated, treating others as yourself. And that, you know, humbling as it is fine for me. There's a lot that I love studying and researching and getting into, but having the fully grasp of like, I feel like I'm gonna spend this lifetime just growing in knowledge and wisdom and just like never knowing all these mysteries that God leaves, because a lot of it we don't need to know. And I'm greatly happy with that. It doesn't bother me. So that's all I got for this one, y'all. Hope you have a good evening, and I will see you guys in another one. Bye for now.